Welcome to another live edition of the Bleed Los podcast. The Dodgers just wrapped up a much needed sweep of the Rockies in Denver, Colorado, but there's still plenty to talk about after what has been a frustrating second half for the boys in blue, including their most recent homestand where they ended up losing 3 of 4 to the NL leading Milwaukee Brewers. Tonight, we're breaking down whether the Dodgers are finally starting to turn things around, how the NL postseason picture is shaking up, and where Los Angeles stands with October getting ever so closer as we approach the final stretch of August. Plus, we'll get into all the latest news surrounding Dodgers owner Mark Walter, where we saw a little bit of spiciness between some of the media and Stan Kanston there before the game. As always, before we get into it, this podcast is brought to you by DodgersBeat.com, your go-to source for all things Dodgers related, including the Bleed Los Podcast Network, where we have this podcast and the Japanese version and all the pregame, postgame footage that you can get. Anthony, it has been some time since we have had an episode. We definitely felt like we needed to get some of our opinions and thoughts out there, especially after the rough stretch the Dodgers have gone on. But before we get into that, how have you been holding up the last 2 weeks?
It's been cool. I got a chance to actually be at a few Dodger games the past week. It's feels like a little bit of nervous tension. I think the atmosphere is kind of like down. The Dodgers have not been helping themselves out at all in many assets, whether we talk about defensively, starting pitching, offensively. It feels like everything is kind of leaking. It's been kind of fun the last couple of days, though. They've kind of taken care of business against the Rockies, but the more frustrating series was the one against Milwaukee that feels like it could have gone our way, and we kind of just shot ourselves in the foot throughout the entirety of the series.
Yeah, they just finished up a wrap of 13 games in 13 days. You had a couple contenders thrown in there, former playoff teams, even a team like the Kansas City Royals. They do some things well on the baseball field. They got Bobby Witt Jr. holding it down the diamond. Surprisingly, they have decent pitching as well. It's just, their offense has kind of been up and down. But the Brewers series is definitely where I think we should definitely kick things off into kind of going over what happened over the last 2 weeks of our hiatus. And it was a frustrating series for a number of reasons. You have Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz who are pretty much at the focal point of every single, tweet that's negative towards the team right now. Even someone like, myself that's very positive and easygoing and about the team is like, it's more of a marathon, maybe when October hits and they get to the sprint run, like I'm going to be like, all right, now show up. Who cares what you did in the 162? We care about for these next, 11 to 13 wins that the team needs to get. But it has been frustrating. The Brewers series, particularly, especially leading off with that first game, they had it. Max Muncy hits the clutch home run, and then Edwin Diaz, for the third time in a 2 week span, not even a 2 week span, a week span after blowing two against Arizona, blows another save. It kind of just set things off for my weekend, Anthony, where I kind of just knew it wasn't going to be good for the Dodgers, a team that struggled against the Brewers last regular season, didn't win a single game, and the Brewers. I don't think the Dodgers were outmatched at all in the series. It's like they had the first game in the bag. They dropped it. They ended up winning, one of the games of that 4 game series. But even, until that Sunday game, which I feel like they never win on Sunday when I watch, it felt like the Dodgers had outplayed the Brewers to an extent, but they still ended up losing 3 of 4. What are your thoughts kind of about that series briefly?
The most frustrating one is the Edwin Diaz blown save because I kind of had chalked up the Mizorowski start as like, okay, this guy's just gonna mow us down. Kind of just chalk it up as an L. We're playing against him in the shadows. It's kind of just like a recipe for disaster. So that game is the most frustrating one for me because we had it won. It was kind of just like, please just take care of business. Let's get a win. Let's kind of get some positive momentum on our side, and it just continued to spiral. And that's not even the most insane part. They eventually ended up running him back later on in the homestand, and kind of like I'm sitting there in the pavilion, kind of like in shock. Not like I'm like, is this really like, are we really playing the trumpets right now? And I know Dave Roberts had that quote of like, "Who else do you trust?" Basically, kind of snapping back at the reporters. It's an awesome clip if you see it. It's like, "Who else do you trust?" So I'm like, well, Tanner Scott's been pretty awesome for like throughout the whole season. I know he has that on his reputation of last year, but I kind of just forgotten about last year and kind of realized like, okay, it's a blip. It happens. You're gonna have a bad year, and unfortunately for him, it was last year. And then you look at the numbers this year. Yeah, he's given up a few. He's blown a few saves or opportunities here and there, but the numbers are really, really good. And whenever he takes them out, I kind of feel like very, very confident. Like, okay, he's gonna go out there, he's gonna do the job, and he's gonna do it effectively. And you saw the last game against Colorado, I think he only threw like less than 10 pitches and game was over basically. So if I do have someone I trust, it's going to be Tanner Scott to get the job done.
Yeah, I think obviously kind of just a segues to probably the first frustrating part of the last 13 days, and it was Edwin Diaz. They signed him to that multi-year contract. He gets injured, goes down, gets the surgery. We're looking at like a 2 to 3 month timeline, and then the Dodgers, where they're at going into the second half, everything's on October. Everyone's looking towards that and hoping everybody's healthy, and Edwin Diaz included. Because if you can add Edwin Diaz and get any glimpse of what he did with the Mets over the last couple of years to put him in the back end of the bullpen. Not even if you need him in the ninth inning, you can kind of rotate him, Tanner Scott. I know Alex Vesey has kind of struggled the last couple of weeks or so, but you have a flurry of arms that you're going to use, and then you have the guys that are in the starting rotation right now. They're going to shift into the bullpen in October because there's just not enough spots for the rotation because you only need 3 or 4 stars, and the Dodgers have like 6, 7, 8. And Edwin Diaz, it's so frustrating because he has an ERA north of 11, north of 12 since being activated off the injured list. And it is kind of annoying. It's kind of like when Dave Roberts says, "Well, give me another option." I understand what he is saying because he's like, not everybody's pitching their best baseball right now. And that's true. The Dodgers bullpen has kind of been a stink fest since the second half has started. And that could be for a variety of different things, whether they're being overworked or, situational things aren't working out their way. Um, a lot of things just aren't going their way in the bullpen. But when you say, well, give me better options, obviously the easy answer is Tanner Scott, which is the case right now. I would imagine going into October, Tanner Scott will be getting the ninth inning primarily just because Edwin Diaz is either not going to have enough time to prove that he's valuable, or maybe he just doesn't have enough time to ramp up if it isn't really a phantom IL situation we're dealing with. But you can't just tell me with a blank face that anybody with an ERA under 11 isn't a better option. Like, you could literally take anybody. Some of the position players that have pitched this year have better ERAs than Edwin Diaz, and I would trust a little bit on the mound. He is a two-pitch pitcher. That is the biggest reason why he's getting hit around. His slider just doesn't look good at all. I know there's some recent articles in The Athletic. I think Fabian Ardaya and Katie Wu were going over it about his arm angle and everything just kind of being shifted on that. That's where they got the neck injury from, where they're saying, he's probably overcompensating with the neck, which is lowering his arm angle, which is in turn making his slider look more like a hittable fastball. And when you can just, eliminate the slider off the bat and just eat on his fastball, he turns into a really bad pitcher, which is what we've seen right now. So if you're the Dodgers, you're hoping that he can get right by the time September hits and he gets enough innings built up, gets the confidence back, because adding him as a ninth inning weapon with Tanner Scott, with possibly Roki Sasaki and even Justin Robleski going to the bullpen, which I imagine Warbo will be back this season, you're talking about a very, very dominant back end of the bullpen, something that we saw last season when the Dodgers did when they incorporated these starters to the bullpen to eat those innings and close out games. So Edwin Diaz is a huge catalyst of what the Dodgers are going to do later in the season. And I think you really do need him to get right. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they do the Tanner Scott approach last season, where they put him on the IL and they just say, you know what, reset. We'll see you next year. Get that surgery, and then we'll look for a reset in year two.
Yeah, we said it at the beginning of August. August to September is basically open tryouts to see who's going to make the Dodgers postseason roster. Last year, the two highest paid guys, Tanner Scott and Michael Conforto, did not make. Well, Tanner Scott did make the initial roster, but then afterwards they shut him down for the rest of the season. And Michael Conforto had a nice view from the bench, did not get any playing time at all. So it's very frustrating that we're back again at this cycle. The two highest paid players that we acquired in the offseason that we thought were going to be big boosts to this team, like, oh, yeah, we're going to add a Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz. We kind of solidified it. And you look at the team, and there are two biggest flaws. The Kyle Tucker thing for me is a little bit more frustrating than the Edwin Diaz stuff. I think had we done the show a week ago, I think I would have just my head would have just exploded because I had been at the stadium, and it's starting to get very bad in the pavilions because they're starting to chirp him. They're starting to yell stuff like $60 million for this. What's up with the hustle? The hustle part is kind of the thing where, like, it's starting to get annoying when he's playing defense specifically. It's starting to Dodger fans will be patient up to a certain point, and I think the patience is starting to wear thin a little bit. We'll see if they actually follow through with the standing ovation that's allegedly going to happen within an hour's time here. I really doubt it. It might be a few people, if at most, maybe a few, but I really doubt that the whole stadium at once will all stand up together, kind of give an ovation. But every time I hear his walk up song, I kind of get the idea like, well, inning is over, or like it's going to be three pitches strikeout, or a weak ground out, or a weak pop up. So that's the one where it's the most frustrating part. Now, a lot of people have kind of suggested the idea of like, okay, Phantom IL, give him 2 weeks to kind of like clear his head. Don't even think about any baseball. Come back at the start of September, and let's see if you can provide a spark or anything that kind of proves that you do belong on not on the team, but like have a roster spot in the playoffs. Because right now, I'm kind of leaning towards like, yeah, your name does carry a lot of weight, but the way you're performing, a lot of teams are kind of looking at you like, why should I fear you?
Yeah, and then you have to a certain extent, and I wrote this in one of my articles where the Dodgers aren't going to let payroll determine their starting, 9 for October, they're starting 13 in the pitching staff. They're going to play the best players that are hot at that right time. And that's how you win World Series. That's how you win playoff games. That's how you have to manage the team. So if Kyle Tucker we'll start to shift over to Tucker now from one frustrating part of the team in Edwin Diaz to another in Kyle Tucker. If he's not playing up to par of what he's doing, they're going to have to start thinking of some things outside the box. And obviously, the big one is a potential call up for DePaula, which we can talk about in a little bit. But at the end of the day, just like Diaz, Dave Roberts is actually really spot on where if the Dodgers want to win the World Series, they need either Kyle Tucker or Teoscar Hernandez or Mookie Betts, like one of the three in that trio to start stepping up. And it just seems like all season it's been up and down like a roller coaster for Mookie Betts and Kyle Tucker. I can't even say Kyle Tucker's even had a good streak last more than a week or so. At least with Mookie Betts, he had a decent month a while back, and now he's starting to hit the ball a little bit harder. Teoscar Hernandez had a really good start to the season until he got injured. Kyle Tucker's just been a dud for probably since he put on the uniform.
In
Like
spring
spring
training,
training
yeah.
wasn't really good. The start of the regular season, I know he had the walk-off hit against the D-backs, I believe in the opening series of the year. But other than that, it's been atrocious, and it's been even worse at home. I mean, it's been written about ad nauseum in terms of his numbers between his home and road splits. We understand that. Today he took on-field batting practice for the first time. He's similar to Ohtani in that aspect where he prefers to do everything indoors, behind the scenes, work off a tee, stuff like that. But they really do need to get him going. And looking at his Baseball Savant page, it is a lot of blue. Not good. We like Dodger blue, but we don't like it on the
Yeah,
Savant
no.
page. The only thing that's really good is that his chase percentage. He does still get his walks. He does have a really good eye at the plate. But the most frustrating thing for me is the defense. The defense has been so bad this month, and I do think it is mental this month with him, where it just seems like everything is crashing down in front of him, including from the offensive standpoint. So now if you're not going to provide value on the defense side and then the base running side, the Dodgers are going to be forced not to play you. And it's going to look really bad when you're getting paid $60 million and you're benched in the playoffs. I don't really, I can't understand why his defensive numbers are so bad this season, where he has a -9 outs above average, where he's basically on par with Teoscar Hernandez when we're talking about a guy that was a potential, Gold Glove Award winner at the corner. He is one of the youngest guys on the teams with Andy Pages at 29, and he just looks like one of the most sluggish guys out there in the outfield, where you start to hear like maybe Mookie Betts should go back out there. Maybe we should get another person up there. Or is the Paulo really that bad in the minors that either Teoscar or Tucker are a marginally improvement over that? And then you look at his bat in AAA or in AA. But yeah, I don't really have any answers. I don't know if Tucker can turn his season around. I don't know if the fans giving him an ovation could help, because honestly, if they give him an ovation, I'm predicting he probably pops out or something, like just a rollover, something that we've seen this entire stretch. And I don't want to see it. I want him to be better, but I roll my eyes at the standing ovation.
Yeah, for me, the defense, at least that play in Colorado series, I forget, I think this is the second game where he's running in and it's a routine fly ball. Like you've seen it been made in the big leagues for years and years and years. And he goes all the way down to the ground attempting to catch it. That's kind of a more of like, okay, this guy's in his own head now. Like he doesn't have the confidence to be out there to field a routine fly ball. The one at home, yeah, I kind of give it to him. He's running to the wall. He probably has, okay, reach out for the wall, reach out for the wall. And before you realize that, he drops the ball. So I'll give him that one on at least. But the routine play is the frustrating part. And again, the dollar figure was going to be criticized the moment that the terms were agreed to. I think before we even knew 60 million was the number, we thought, okay, 40 million maybe around that general area. So now the number is 60, and now we're going to critique you. Where are you really putting up the $60 million worth of performance? Unfortunately, he's not. I think it's going to be a case of kind of Tanner Scott last year, where this year is just kind of a wash. I don't think you're going to be able to rescue it. August 21st, as we speak now, got about roughly like maybe 30 games left in the season, maybe 40. I think it's over for him at least this season. Now, if he comes into the offseason next year, it might be an extended offseason. We'll see what happens. But if he just kind of wipes away whatever happens and kind of has the mindset and talks to Tanner in the offseason, like, hey, how did you handle like your first season in Dodger Blue? I know it didn't go as the way you wanted to, but how did you bounce back? And in spring training, you see kind of strides and stuff like that. The good thing is a lot of the podcasts and like interviews have been coming out from like within the clubhouse, his teammates and stuff, and his coach, more specifically Dave Roberts. They all have his back. They haven't given up hope on him. They're giving him everything basically to support him, giving him advice, still making him part of the team. Like, we know you're struggling. We know this is in you. And that's the thing that I love the most. They're not going to go out there and let him essentially drown. Unfortunately, he is drowning, but they're going to give him as many life rafts as possible to kind of save himself, at least trying to make something of the season worth it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And Paul Vaughn in the chat brings up a great point. And the Dodgers did overpay for Tucker. When the numbers started to come out, 60 million AAV for 4-year contract. You have a couple opt outs thrown in there. It was always going to be hard to live up to that billing. Honestly, it was probably impossible to live up to that billing. You would have to have a season like Ohtani had in 2024 where you're hitting 50 home runs, you're stealing 50 bags, and then you have the option to start pitching later in the season or the following season. He was never going to put up the WAR numbers to get to that point. He's not a home run hitter. He's just one of those average in every single aspect where he wasn't bad. He was above average to slightly above average in defense. He was good at getting on base. He had 20 to 25 home run potential. He was a near 300 hitter. The Dodgers just needed some aspect of that, and they just haven't gotten anything around that at all. The defense has been bad. The base running has been iffy. The offense just really hasn't been there. He's a left handed stick that they need in the middle of that lineup, and he just really hasn't done much this season. And since the second half, it's not even just him. It's literally most of the team if your name isn't Ohtani. And even Freddie Freeman to an extent where Freeman's still been batting over 300, but the OPS is way down. I think this month it's like 500, which is not Freddie Freeman like. We need Freeman to be hitting extra base hits. We need Mookie Betts to have extra base hits. We don't need these guys to just be getting on base. That's the job for the 6, 7, 8, 9 hitters, is for them to get on base, and the big boys at the top of the lineup to drive them in with some power. And they just haven't had that at all. And then even just some of the at bat quality that the offense has had. Ohtani swinging at first pitch, being the leadoff hitter, just drives me insane. Unless it's a meatball, just learn to take a pitch or two. And most of the time, his first at bat of the ball game is like the worst at bat of the ball game. Like, he'll swing. I think he had against the Rockies in the first game of the series. I'm like, all right, yeah, let's start it off. He swung. I think he swung at one, swung at another, and they were all changeups, and he just wasn't close to them at all. At least later in the game, he clobbered 2 home runs. But come on, be the table setter as the leadoff guy. Other than that, the offense has looked really bad in the second half, though, and just a couple stats show that. Since July 1st, they are 14th in batting average with 241. They are 20th in on base percentage at 309, so they're not getting on base at all. 14th in slugging at 403, so they're not hitting for power, and they're 21st in WRC plus at 95. So they are 5% below league average, and it is shown because their record in that span is 500, 21 and 21. It's very similar to the stretch that they had last year in July and August that they kind of corrected in September. But correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony. The offense did not look right from the middle of the summer until the end of the World Series, because even in the playoffs, they were carried by the starting pitching. It seems like that's going to be the plan that they're going through right now as they try to go for a three-peat.
The only reason they even won games in the playoffs was ultimately because of their starting pitching, but they came through in very key situations. It came down to timely hitting. You can go. I was actually looking at old highlights of the DS last year against the Phillies. The Phillies had a pretty strong hold against the Dodgers. They kind of had a good, like, okay, we can keep with you. But the Dodgers had some very, very big timely hitting, whether it was Teoscar Hernandez's a home run in game 1. Will Smith had that, I think, RBI single that scored 2 in game 2. And then Andy Pajes, of course, had that little Orion Kerkering mishap happen to him. But ultimately, the theme of the playoffs last year was for the Dodgers was we got to ride our starting pitcher, and if we give him 1 or 2 runs, ultimately that should be enough. Then you ultimately, when you got to the World Series and you played against Toronto, you realize, well, one or 2 runs isn't going to be enough because Toronto Blue Jays can put up 5 or 6 runs on you in an instant, and they kind of figured out a little bit of the Dodgers starting pitching. But I think that's going to be ultimately the key again this season. It's going to be okay. We got our well right now. I have Blake Snell and Yamamoto are my 2 starters. We'll see what Shohei looks like as he kind of builds himself back up. Where they use him as a starter again, like they did last year. Like, okay, you're gonna start, but we're gonna give you 3 innings, or we're gonna give you 4 innings, and then we'll kind of see where we're at after 4. We'll see if we can push it, and if not, we'll go into our bullpen and our relievers and stuff like that. But again, it's gonna be ultimate. The bullpen is ultimately just gonna be guys that are not starters are gonna be used as relievers. We talked about it before. I think Roki has already agreed to, like, hey, I can see the writing on the wall. I probably won't be getting any postseason starts, bearing any big injuries and stuff like that. I'm more than comfortable going back to the bullpen and kind of doing whatever is needed, basically at this point. Justin Robleski, same way. The interesting ones are the guys that are in AAA. You mentioned it in the text. Gavin Stone, I think, might be the Tony Gonsolin kind of break glass in case of emergency. Emmett Sheehan just got optioned right back down to AAA again today, so we'll see if this was the last ride for him this season. Hopefully not. I'm gonna throw his name out there because he's being used as a reliever. Bobby Miller. Bobby Miller is another interesting quote unquote candidate for a right-handed arm out the bullpen. So right now, it's kind of just coming to, okay, we're getting guys healthy. Tyler Glass now will be activated like within a few couple of days in that Atlanta series. So we'll see how he looks up here with the big roster. Blake Snell is the one who's kind of looked awesome. I got to see him live and in person, and he just basically mowed apart the Kansas City Royals. And I'm like, okay, this is the Blake Snell that I remember in the postseason. So again, it's just going to be, can we get healthy? Can we get the right mixture of guys in the bullpen? And can we figure out the ninth inning, even though I think we both agree Tanner Scott will more than likely be the ninth inning guy going forward?
Yeah, I mean it's a good segue here is the health part of the Dodgers right now. So we're, a little bit past the halfway point in August, and there are several guys that are on track to come back in that first week of September. Dave Roberts today gave a lot of pregame updates, particularly on the injury front, and probably the biggest one is Will Smith. He took live batting practice today. It looks like everything went well, was seen throwing the baseball, was seen running out there with trainers. So as long as he continues to check the boxes off, Dave Roberts said that they're looking for him to start a rehab assignment that will last around 4 to 5 days, play around 3 to 4 games, and then he should be activated that first week of September, which is going to be a massive boost to the Dodgers because as much as Dalton Rushing either may have riled your feathers or something like along those lines with how he's played, he was a very good catcher this year, defensively and offensively, and in a lot of ways I think every statistic, batting average, OPS, WRC plus, all that stuff, he was better than Will Smith this season. They need somebody behind the plate that can hit. And the reason why is because Will Smith is like the glue between the entire lineup. Max Muncy is also considered that guy, but I think Will Smith gives the Dodgers such an advantage over every other team because not many teams have a catcher that can actually hit. And how many times have we seen Will Smith come up clutch? Also, you have to add in the fact of him being a catcher, him being familiar with the pitching staff. The numbers don't lie. Ever since Dalton Rushing did take over the pitching staff, everything has gone up ERA-wise, whether it's the starting rotation and the bullpen. So there is some management there that needs to be done. But the other big one is what you brought up, is Tyler Glasnow. And Glasnow coming back during that Atlanta series, that's another addition to the Dodgers rotation. They already added Tarik Skubal at the deadline. They already got Blake Snell back from the injured list. They're starting to see some of these guys that are getting ready to shift to bullpen roles. Roki Sasaki already said that he's open to it while he'll remain in the starting rotation to finish out the year. But putting him in there makes him a weapon. And I think the biggest one is, looking at the Ohtani. The Ohtani one is They're eyeing him to come back that first week of September. They're going to start building him up slowly like they did last season, but they only have a month to do it this time. They don't have most of the summer to go from 1 inning to 2 innings to 3 innings. So, what does that look like come October if he is fully healthy? Are we talking about a guy that's like an opener that can only go 3 to 4 innings? It's going to be really interesting to see what Dave Roberts does. And we kind of get a little bit of a sneak peek at this rotation for the playoffs this weekend. Because if you look at what the Pirates have to face, they got Yamamoto tonight, Blake Snell, and Tarik Skubal. It kind of makes you like you kind of answered it a little bit, but like who's like leading this rotation in October? What would like they have so many toys to play with at this point where it's like who do you put who goes game 1, game 2, game 3, game 4 when everybody is healthy? What is your ideal rotation for say the division series?
Hand up, I completely forgot that Tarik Skubal was on the team for a second there. It kind of just slipped my mind.
Just another all-star
But
player. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We'd have
yeah,
forgot
it
about him.
completely just slipped my mind. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot because I was like kind of blanking on the starters that we had. Ultimately, I kind of would use that last 2 weeks of the season as like, okay, who's throwing the best? Who looks the sharpest? Depending on matchup, if it's a lefty and righty situation, it's kind of hard not to give the ball to Yamamoto. He's the guy that won you the World Series last year. You kind of give him the game one. And then I kind of like Scooble in a game too, especially if we're playing here at home, because I think Blake Snell on the road, he proved it last year that the moment doesn't really get too big for him. We played a lot of games on the road because we were a wild card team, so we had to open in Philadelphia. We opened in Milwaukee, and we played in Toronto to open those games, our series. So I kind of like the idea of a Blake Snell for a game three. So I kind of those three would be Yamamoto, Scooble, Snell, and I you could argue them any order you want. I don't think there's a wrong answer. And I think those would be my top three for at least for an NLDS. NLCS is that kind of like when you start adding like, okay, maybe Shohei gets a game four. Uh, we'll see what Glass now looks like on his way back here to the big leagues. But I think Shohei, I kind of would pigeonhole him in as number four right now.
I'll give you my nugget right here, and this is what I think David Vassay got me. You know, when I'm at the gym listening to Dodger talk, I think I'm a Blake Snell fanboy now because he's just looked so good since being activated from the IL. I think when October starts, if they get that first round bye, hopefully. If not, that wild card round that will be theirs. I think they will go Yamamoto. I think they will go Blake Snell, and then I think they'll go Skubal. Interesting point. Did you know Skubal has never started a home playoff game over the last 2 years with the Tigers? Every single one's
Really?
been on the road. Every single one. And he's had some really good games. He's also had some blowups. I think they were talking about it the other day about I think it was the game 5 against the Guardians in 24 where he gave up the grand slam to Thomas.
Yeah.
That one still hurts him, but every other start he's had, I wrote about it when they traded for him. I said, look, they're getting a postseason dog. Like he has a sub 3 ERA, almost sub 2. It's like 2.2 ERA in the postseason. Doesn't have a winning record because, the Tigers have either dropped some games late. Last year against the Mariners, your family would know. Skubal had him on the ropes, and they took him out of the game after the 6th inning, and the Tigers bullpen proceeded to blow it. So he was in line to push them to another playoff game. I think he is a road warrior. It also says, do the Dodgers want to push him more than what Scott Boras will allow? Because that's the other added element of all of this. I don't think we're going to be seeing Skubal doing Yamamoto type of theatrics and coming out of the bullpen, stuff like that. He's going to start his 1 or 2 games in any given series, and that's pretty much all you're probably going to get from him, which is fine because the Dodgers have Yamamoto, they have Blake Snell, they have Ohtani, who's probably going to be a Swiss Army knife in the postseason if he does want to possibly pitch out of the bullpen. It's still a dream case scenario, but if you're only build up to 3 innings, hell, why not? But embarrassment of riches for Dave Roberts and the Dodgers, and we're going to kind of see it this weekend against the Pirates, which is a good way to kind of preview this series a little bit. No Paul Skeens, but the Pittsburgh Pirates are one of the best offenses in baseball. That is a correct sentence that you have heard. They are top 3 in runs scored. What are you looking for from this weekend series? Do you think they're going to take a lot from Coors and bring it into these 3 games, or are you expecting some pushback from the Pirates? Because in my opinion, I think the Dodgers need to sweep this series. I think they need to push the win streak to 6. If you have these 3 guys going, you have to win every single game this weekend. I'll still settle for 2 out of 3, but I definitely need a sweep.
Just to finish off on your Scooble take, in Detroit, he was the guy. I think with the Dodgers rotation, he's one of the guys. There's a lot less pressure when you look at your starting rotation. You got MVP Cy Young Award winners and stuff like that. So hopefully for him in the playoffs, there's less pressure. With the Pirates, yeah, kind of a scary little team. I think anyone that plays the Dodgers right now in the month of August, I'm kind of terrified because I don't know exactly what I'm going to get. For me, they have to keep up the momentum off this sweep. I think you have to go out there and sweep them. I do think the Pirates are going to push back a little bit, but I think it's a good tone setter that we have Yamamoto kind of taking the bump today. I trust that these three guys will kind of keep at it. They'll do their jobs, one or two runs here, maybe or so. The biggest fear again is, will the Dodgers offense respond? And they responded very well after the Milwaukee series when they went to Colorado, and they all were firing on all cylinders. But as we've seen it from series to series, it's kind of like, yeah, these are the Dodgers that I remember. And in this series, it wouldn't surprise me if like, oh, it's just a lot of the same thing. Awful at bats, not working a count. Shohei first pitch swinging, Mookie being too aggressive, Freddie looking awful. For me, you have to go in and you have to sweep these guys because you have to get as much positive momentum heading to Atlanta. Atlanta is one of those teams that when they came here, I was at the stadium and they just basically whooped on us. I think we only had, I forget who was pitching. I think it was Bryce Elder. It was that, yeah, it was Bryce Elder for Mother's Day. I remember that. Yeah. I was sitting in the stadium with my mom watching the game, enjoying the game. Before you realize it's the seventh inning, the Dodgers only have two hits. Two hit. That's all they had throughout the whole game was two hits. It's kind of one of those, just you have to go into Atlanta with as much positive feelings and momentum, whether guys are firing in all cylinders, if the starting rotation does his job. I think you have enough confidence to go into that series and be like, yeah, we can come in here and kind of get a series to sway our way, considering what happened early on in the season, where I'm pretty sure that Chris Sale pitched in that series as well. So I think they had all three of their top guys kind of just embarrass us basically early on in the year. So now it's our turn to go over there and kind of return the favor to them.
Yeah, and then you also have to factor in no Paul Skeens, which I know Paul Skeens has been a shell of himself this season, just hasn't really been on par to what he was his first 2 years in the show, including last year when he won the Cy Young. But, you still have two pitchers that have ERAs north of four, Bubba Chandler and then Spencer Jones, or Jared Jones. So you got to see what you got to get there. And then it's a pitching staff for the Pirates that was a strength last year, and now it's a weakness because they have multiple injuries, including Mitch Keller, who's been one of their more reliable arms for the last couple of years. That Sunday game is a TBD. They don't know who's going to pitch that game yet. So I think if you're the Dodgers, you have to continue that momentum, take with whatever you took from Colorado, because they did have better at bat quality for the most part. They were hitting better with runners in scoring position. They were taking a better approach at the plate, kind of had more of a next man up mentality, which is what they had last October, which is what you hope they carry on for the rest of the season, and also into October as well. So I think the big thing that we're definitely, someone asked in the chat as well, the MVP race is definitely heating up right now. It is a lot closer than I thought it was going to be at this time of the year. I'm starting to lean one way over the other, but Ohtani versus PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong of the Chicago Cubs, is definitely making some noise. What say you to the MVP race right now?
Oh, I don't want to say my answer because
I
I
don't either, and
usually,
I think we're gonna get
yeah,
clowned for it.
yeah. If Shohei, please just pitch well in the month of September. Whatever innings he's allowed to pitch in September, because it's very, very close. And I look at PCA's numbers, and I every time I look at Shohei's at bats, and he goes first pitch swinging, I'm like, you're losing the MVP here. You're losing it because you're just, I don't know if he's pushing or he's just in his own head. But for me, yeah, oh man, I can't believe I'm gonna say it. I can't. I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it, but you can feel where like I'm heading. I think this is PCA's MVP kind of to lose. And I hate to say that because I think Shohei has kind of been. I wonder if the knee has really been affecting him a lot, and he's kind of just like, okay, like why am I pushing it? And to this point, in the middle of the season, PCA has had some standout moments, and what I love is that Shohei has kind of matched those moments as well too. For me, ultimately, it's going to come down to the month of September. It's going to be like, okay, if Shohei comes out, say he has, I don't know, I'm going to throw out a number, four starts, and he looks like the Shohei that we saw at the early start of the season. I think you can say, okay, this guy is the MVP. But if he comes out and he's flat, and his bat is also looking worse and worse, I think that's where PCA kind of sneaks in and kind of gets the MVP. Ultimately, for me, would I want to see a Shohei MVP or will I want to see a Shohei World Series MVP? I think the answer is very obvious for me. I would rather see him lifting up the World Series and then on the other side lifting up a World Series MVP. So, and I think he might be there too as well too. I don't think he'll ever admit it, but I think he is chasing the Cy Young, the NL Cy Young, which unfortunately he's not going to get this year. But World Series MVP is one of those elusive trophies that's also missing from his closet. Basically, he's got every trophy imaginable.
Yeah, for me, I'm also in agreement with you, and it's not a negative for Otani. I'm not dissing him or whatever, but you know, if Otani could have made 15 to 20 starts or even more and continued pitching, even as he did last year, we're getting slowly, progressively built up over the entire second half of the season. I would have said it's unanimous. Like because he's doing the two-way role, he's doing it at an elite level, and the way he was pitching to start the season, you were like, yes. And in my opinion, it still is kind of Otani's to lose. But if you continue to see, like you mentioned, some poor at bat quality, and you see PCA having some really big games, it becomes a question of do we have voter fatigue? Because it's really up to the Baseball Writers Association when they're electing it. Do they continually want to put Otani on this pedestal and continue to give him the award to say if he only makes a handful of innings, pitches a handful of innings in September, like is that enough to take away from what PCA has done? Because PCA is the complete baseball player right now. He is hitting the ball extremely well. He is one of the best defenders in baseball, can play anywhere in the outfield, leads all of Major League Baseball in outs above average and defensive war. Overall war, regardless of where you look at it, whether it's baseball reference or Fangraphs, he has Otani beat by at least one or more. And that's with Otani he's having a good offensive season. And it's just not on par with what we've seen last year and the year before that, which was always going to be hard for him to replicate, especially when you add another year of age. You add him trying to win potentially a Cy Young and putting a lot of emphasis on pitching. And now it just seemed like this year like his body was failing him. And that's why a lot of people were questioning, saying, well, how long can he keep the two-way roll up? I think that got blown out of proportion to an extent because I do think he is fine. He leads the National League in OPS with 930, 940, something like that. And a lot of offensive stats he's got PCA beat, but they're very similar. Home runs, they're at the same. RBIs, because PCA is also a leadoff hitter most nights, is very similar as well. But I think the added element of being a very good defensive player means something to me. It means something to fans, and it definitely means something to writers. There's a reason why a designated hitter exclusively did not win an MVP until Otani won it in 2024. And that's because he did something that was just never done before, 50-50. When you start putting in really good offensive numbers, decent pitching, or really good pitching numbers, but you only pitched, less than half the season, writers are going to say, well, PCA did it for a whole year. And that's not just what I'm saying, it's what writers are definitely going to think about. So it's definitely going to be a very interesting conversation, especially if Otani says maybe in the first start he comes back, he goes 2 innings. Then his next start, he goes 3 innings. The start after that, he tries to push it to 5 innings and say all of them are scoreless or he gives up 1 run or less. Then you would start to say, well, look, he came back and started pitching, had a sub 2 ERA compared to his sub 2 ERA in the first couple of months of the season. Look at him. He's the two-way player. He's the unicorn. He's the MVP. Unfortunately, sorry PCA. But if he doesn't pitch in the second half, or he doesn't pitch as well, I think it's going to be PCA awards to lose. But it's really up to PCA. Can he sustain the success he's had over the last several weeks? That's also a question to him because we've seen him, for guys that watch baseball broader, he's had such an up and down season too, where he'll have these crazy cold streaks that take him out of the MVP race. But right now he's on one of those hot streaks. And Otani, like you said, I agree. I don't think he really necessarily will have MVP at the forefront of his mind, but he's definitely gonna, maybe feel some type of way if he doesn't get it this year.
Yeah, Michael Jordan couldn't win MVP every year. Same
Pitch,
with
that's
Tom
Charles
Brady.
Barkley. He won it one year.
Yeah. For me, yeah, well, back to the PCA thing. If you look at the early on of the year, there was like a low light reel of like all his defensive miscues that he had out in center fielder. So it's actually kind of impressive to see how fast he was able to turn around his season, considering like how it started. So for me, Shohei, I mean, it's going to be hard because it's always going to be compared to that 50-50 season and even the season he had last year. It's kind of like Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts gets compared a lot to that 2018 season, which was ridiculous for him. and now you're kind of almost 10 years removed from it. I know it's kind of like 8 years since, but people are still bringing up his 2018 season. I'm like, well, yeah, that was an awesome season, but you got to remember it's been 8 years since that's happened. There's a lot of wear and tear on Mookie Betts, and he's not going to be able to produce at the level it is. Yeah, it's frustrating when he's out there and he's not producing, but I'm not comparing it to 2018 because I know 2018 Mookie is a different Mookie to he is now. So for me, Shohei, I think again, I hate to admit it, but I do think this is PCA's MVP to lose. And who knows, maybe in the month of September, he just is really bad. I don't think he'll be really bad, but maybe he just doesn't do enough. And Shohei is able to convince the writers, like, hey, like I did enough. I think it is going to be a very, very close voting system. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's like within a few votes that ultimately decides the MVP race here.
Yeah, I think if Otani wins, it's not going to be unanimous. That's like kind
No.
of like how I'm thinking. I think there's going to be a decent amount of voters that give PCA first place votes. It just depends on how many of those voters he can sway, because there are some voters that have been public out there that says, you know, what he did in the first half of the season was enough, and I will continue to give him the MVP based upon him being a two-way player. So we'll see what happens over the final stretch of the season, and it's going to be very interesting by this time next month and October getting closer, more of the playoff picture getting closer and more clearer. So we'll see how Ohtani and PCA the race is shaking out as well, including, you know, you got multiple other players that are also making their case. You know, you got CJ Abrams, you also got Matt Olson. They've had really good seasons as well. But kind of let's end it on I guess a negative note for this episode. And it's the thing that kind of everybody's been dodging, especially in the media world, and people are getting called out for, including our guy at ESPN, Jeff Passan. The Mark Walter situation. A lot has happened since our last episode. Walter is under fire. We were all excited for the Lakers season. I was on board. Mark Walter, Guggenheim Group, new show. You know, we're bringing back the dynasty Lakers. Well, he sold the team. He is under federal investigation for some things that I can't quite put into words, where I'm not the best guy to explain it, but the gist of it is Mark Walter has multiple insurance companies that he's bought. They collect premiums on this, and that money is invested into corporations that Walter himself benefits from or owns. Unfortunately, federally, there are limits to what you can do. And in Walter's case, he invested too much into his own personal adventures, and he lied on it to the federal government, which is why now he's being probed. He is now trying to quickly pay off those loans that are over those premiums and those numbers and those limits set by the federal government, which is why he sold the Lakers for a $2 billion profit, which is why he is looking now to sell his football team, the Chelsea Football Club, which is why now there is other reports that he is even looking to possibly sell, or has looked to possibly sell, the Dodgers TV network rights, which is probably one of the most valuable assets to the team. There's a lot to kind of take away from this. Obviously, we're not financial experts. There's other people out there that are reporting on it, including, you know, credible journalists from the Wall Street Journals, the New York Times, all that stuff. They have what they've been doing their research on. I think there is some misconception about how involved the Dodgers are. One, the loan that was involved with the Dodgers is almost paid off. I think they said it was like less than 1% or a couple $100,000. I don't know, something very limited on there. So the Dodgers being tied to it is very low. I know there's conspiracy theories out there where like this is how they've been funneling their payroll. That's not the case in this situation. The Dodgers are paying for themselves quite well, and we've seen that just because of the net profit that they've been getting from the team since Ohtani's joined. And even Stan Kanston, the president, said as much. He said, you know, Walter is not looking to sell the team, but he could sell his stake in the team. He owns the majority shares of the Dodgers. The Dodgers themselves aren't going to go bankrupt like a lot of people are thinking, but it does raise questions of what the future of the franchise holds. I just think it's so cloudy right now that it is premature, like Stan was telling Dylan Hernandez today, to make assumptions about what's going to go on with the Dodgers. Because I would say the reason why we haven't seen any inclination of him selling the Dodgers is because the Dodgers are his most valuable asset. They're literally a printing machine of money right now, regardless of how much is on the payroll. What are you making of all this? Are you getting like Vietnam flashbacks of, your people in your family saying, "Oh my God, we're going through the old ownership group where he's trying to sell, things that were connected to the team to pay off his divorce, pay off personal expenses, all that." Do you think it's similar to that situation, or are you just, it's too quick to put judgment on it yet?
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, considering I am a Lakers fan, I'm not. I'm accustomed to ownership drama basically every offseason, but this is the first time in a while where it's actually kind of correlates to the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers post Frank McCourt were like, okay, yeah, things are a little shaky still, but at least like we don't have to deal with our owner. Well, at least at the time when I was what they switched ownerships like in 2013, right? I was still in high school, so this is still very much like okay, cool, but I didn't really know what was going on. I just saw Magic Johnson as like the face of. I legitimately thought he had bought the Dodgers because I wasn't so clued in. I was in high school. I think I was a sophomore in high school. For me, it's a lot of like stuff going on. I think Mark is gonna fight like hell to keep the Dodgers. I think that's why he hasn't officially listed it. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, speculating." I'll throw. Or I'm gonna use that word instead are speculating that eventually in the offseason he will list them for sale. I don't think so. I think he's going to keep them. I think he's going to fight until he has no penny left. And then he has to say, oh, well, I'm going to sell my share of the team. I think the number you threw out was what, 27%? Is that what he owns? For me, I think there's a lot left. It's still kind of cloudy to kind of cast judgment and say guilty, stuff like that. I think you have to let it play out in the court of law and stuff like that. I am not a finance bro. I studied marketing. I know I was in the same business or same area as finance bros, but I'm not going to pretend and tell you like I know exactly what's going on. I just read what's being reported on. The one interesting thing that I saw on Twitter, at least, was that all of a sudden a lot of people majored in finance, have finance degrees and stuff like that. So for me, I'm kind of just taking it day by day because I feel like every day there's just a new piece of information that gets either reported on or you'll see something kind of happen here and there. So for me, at least for now, Jeff Passan did have an interesting little like quote. I forget on what podcast he was, where he's like, "Well, ultimately, MLB kind of puts the Dodgers on a pedestal, so it'd be interesting to see what happens here once everything's kind of all up in the air." So again, we'll see what happens. I kind of want to let the court of law kind of take effect here and kind of see what's revealed and stuff like that before I actively accuse someone of doing something. I know the information's out there, and stuff like that. But for me, I'm starting to get a little bit of flashbacks to Frank McCourt, but not aggressive flashbacks, just like little like teeny bits here and there, like starting to think like, oh, what if he is like has to sell, and then like the next guy that comes in isn't just wants to shed payroll, and all of a sudden like we're back to like building teams from the farm system, which I would love, but what does that mean with Shohei? Shohei said he was kind of tuned in with Mark Walter and Andrew Friedman. Would Andrew Friedman want to stick around? And Mark, yeah. So that's where it kind of like when I like have little moments at work, like on my breaks and stuff, and I start thinking and reading about the Dodgers, I'm like, I gotta stop because I'm getting in my own head, kind of like coming up with my own conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So I'm gonna just chill out and just wait till more information is released, basically.
Yeah, kind of to put your head at ease is it's not about whether Walter has to sell the team or not, or even any of his shares. So, because the Dodgers are his most valuable asset, he's looking to pay off the loans so that it looks better for the federal government. In my opinion, just the way everything has transpired and how quickly he's selling things off, I think he is guilty. Like, I think it's like all the evidence is there. So he's clearly going to have something happen. Is he going to go to jail? No. Is he going to get fined? Probably yes. Is he going to get fined a lot of money? Probably yes. It really just matters is if he has enough money available to pay those fines and to pay off the loans and the premiums and all that stuff from the insurance companies that he now has to officially disclose to the government. And if that's the case, there's still a situation where, yeah, he has enough money and then he can keep the Dodgers and he has his stake. He just doesn't own the Lakers. He doesn't own the Chelsea Football Club. And he's kind of going back to square one. So I think that's where we're at. It's not really a Dodgers, oh my God, the Dodgers are going to collapse here. It would just be like if Walter has to sell his majority stake, it would just go to another billionaire who's going to take it as an investment. And they've already even been reporting on the LA Times that there are multiple billionaire businessmen that would be up for grabs to purchase the Dodgers because of what it means right now. They're literally just a net profit. They're generating money every year with Ohtani, and it's already been reported that Ohtani, take it at his camp's word, that even if Walter were to sell the team, he wouldn't invoke that clause that he can opt out of his contract. Because I think as long as Andrew Freeman and everyone behind the scenes is running it, no matter what billionaire owner buys the team, they're going to have the wills to spend money the way they've continued to spend money. Maybe it just won't be as egregious, especially if other owners use this as ammo for a salary cap. But I definitely think it's going to be more stuff we get information from after October, after the season's over.
Yeah. You gotta love LA sports because it feels like there's a reality TV show, whether it's the Dodgers or the Lakers. The Lakers, especially more than the Dodgers the last couple of years. But yeah, I just found it kind of strange now that you do say it. Like, if how do you sell a team? I think I think when they reached out to Bob Iger, they reached out like on a Thursday, and like you woke up on Friday or Saturday, the team had sold. That's kind of like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because you talk about teams being sold and stuff like that. It usually is a long while. It's a long vetting process, and it felt like overnight. Like if you were selling me a bike and I came up to your house, I'm like, hey, can I buy your bike for $20? And like you don't even negotiate. You just take my $20 and you give me the bike. That's basically what ended up happening there.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation. It's going to follow the team. Everybody's just using this at ammo. It kind of sucks because I just feel like the last couple of years, it's just been so much shit has happened with this team. And like they've won 2 World Series, but it all started with the Ohtani and the gambling and Ipe. And it just seems like every single year there's just been something that has followed team. And that's not even going over, what happened in the years prior, like with Trevor Bauer, Julio Urias, all that stuff. So, we'll see what happens over the next couple of months. Like I said, I don't think we're going to get much to come out of the Dodgers camp of things unless, Walter really does have to sell the team. But even that, the MLB team being sold, it's very rare that it happens mid-season like the Padres being put up for sale. But even that was just such a unique situation with a former owner dying, the brothers wanting to go one way, and then his widowed wife trying to go another way, and they ended up selling the team. But the game's getting ready to start here tonight. Hopefully the Dodgers continue that win streak going against the Pirates and taking advantage of their schedule right now, which I will mention is the easiest schedule for the rest of the season, I believe, starting today. So hopefully they can win some ball games. Anthony, any closing thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
Closing thoughts. Let's take care of business against the Pirates. I would hate to just get rid of all our positive momentum we built against Colorado and just throw it all away today. Go out there, go get a win for Yamamoto, go get a win for Snell tomorrow, and on Sunday, go get a win for Tarik Skubal. So those are my closing thoughts.
Alrighty, yeah. So that about does it for this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast. Yes, a live edition. Drea is at the game today. She should be back next time while we're all together here to go over possibly this most recent homestand before they get ready to go on the road. Obviously, if you want to watch up any of the pregame, postgame footage that is on the channel on the Bleed Lows podcast, you can also check out all of our articles for news, updates, opinions, especially if you want more information about the Mark Walter saga. DodgersBeat.com is the way to go. And if you want to follow us, we are there on X at SnavelyCody6 and then at Anthony Acosta _. We will be back next time here on the Bleed Lows podcast. Have a good one.